Can you stand in the back, Mom? I'm kidding. Hi, I'm JT. Can everybody hear me okay-ish at least? Yay. Thank you so much for coming. I have this like innate fear that nobody's ever going to show up to anything I do unless there's like booze, and there's no booze here. But there's coffee, so we're good. So, yes. Okay. So, I didn't practice at all. I just put together a bunch of photos to remind me to somehow stay on the subject of treasure. And if you don't, for those of you that know me personally, I'm like all over the place. And that's basically what this is going to be like. So yeah, treasure. Funny story. I was driving by here because my studio, by the way, if you want to buy any prints or pareos or canvases, is actually right across the street. And I was driving with my studio manager, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like we should totally go to one of those creative mornings. Like the next one's coming up." I was like, "Oh yeah, totally. I want to go to one of those too." And then it didn't click until like maybe like a few hours later that I was actually supposed to like come and speak anyways. I was like, "Oh shit." So they said I could swear, by the way. So I actually looked at the text message I'd got, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's actually a theme. It's treasure." And I was like, how am I going to talk about treasure without one, sounding like an asshole, or two, sounding like Gollum from Lord of the Rings? And oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm in charge of the clicker. What do you know? So yeah, I had a hard time. I actually asked a lot of people, like, what would you say as treasure? And what I got was, like, your artwork is like living treasures or sharing the treasure of the island. And it was really pretty and really eloquent, that all the suggestions that I got. But it didn't really resonate with me. I felt kind of cliche and kind of fake. And I realized, and plot twist, I actually only recently have come to see my artwork or whatever I do as treasure or valuable. And so what I wanted to center on is kind of my journey of how defining treasure and, sorry, I'm not breathing. Okay. Treasure and just kind of my struggles in making it something I value and something that I feel worthy enough to come and talk to you about today. So when I was doing my research, I was watching all these like TED Talks and other creative morning talks and asking for more advice. Fun fact, Nick Kuchar said I should spike the coffee. I don't know if you know who that is. Yes, I have the text message to prove it. But everybody talked about their background and kind of bragged about themselves. And I'm totally gonna do that right now. I'm gonna take this in my 5 minutes of fame. So born and raised on Oahu. My mom is from Kona. My dad is from Waianae. I was a crazy child, as you can tell by my hair. I got that Filipino Puerto Rican flair. And I was nuts. I used to eat out of the dog bowl in daycare. That's one of my mother's favorite stories. And I was not an artsy child at all. I think the most out-of-the-box thing that my parents tell me was when my dad came to get me from preschool. The kids are playing in the sandbox. And they're like, my mom's face, she's so embarrassed. Like, "Oh, what are you making?" And the kids are like, "Oh, I'm making a cake," or like, "I'm making a pizza." And my dad's like, "What are you making?" I was like, "Dry fish and beer." And so out of the box, there's super proud moment for my parents. But yeah, growing up, I was not artsy at all. I was actually a hardcore jock. I did football to prove a point. I was on the defensive line. I was no kicker. I was, yeah, like that is. So I did wrestling and judo. And when I say there was like no artsiness whatsoever, I took one art class in high school. It was a life drawing class where I'm sure everybody knows, but that's where you draw naked people. And I went to Punhos, of course, only Punho, yeah. You'd be able to draw naked people in high school. yeah, I ended up going to the mainland for 10 years, getting my undergrad in exercise science, doing my master's in exercise physiology. I came back home in 2019 and even wanted to start my PhD in health and human performance. I was working at this super bougie luxury place called Sensei on Lanai. It's like, yeah. Have you guys? Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't. I wasn't like Sensei like salary level. No, no, no. I was. It was wonderful though, and yeah, that's kind of the gist of like all my background. And I don't usually lead with this story because when people ask me like, "Oh, how did you get to art?" Um, the main. Okay, wait, no. I'll give you like the like marketing version. So in 2017, I like that you're in the front. You're making me feel better. In 2017, end of 2016, I ended up having hip surgery, and I was in Chicago at the time. And kind of the summary that I tell everybody is that I had surgery. I was sitting on the couch, got bored, and I just decided to start drawing. And that's the first time I ever drew. Like there was no doodling. I didn't draw anime as a kid or anything. That's just the first time I picked up a pencil and started drawing. And eventually, when I got fired in 2020, I decided to become an artist during COVID. And yeah, that's the end of it. But the real story of why I didn't pursue what I was doing for years, which is trying to be an exercise physiologist and sports performance specialist, was also in 2016. Oh, aw, everybody, yeah? Okay. I'll get to that. We'll just leave his face up there. That's Mele. Is that, actually, we'll go back because, cool. We'll go to this one. I'm sorry if you don't like needles. But in 2016, I had also gotten breast implants. And I was super excited. I paid for them myself. I actually didn't tell anybody. And it was funny, not to throw him under the bus, but I told my dad before I told my mom, like 20 minutes before I was gonna go under, because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go in surgery and I'm never talking to my parents again if I die. So I was like, hey dad, what are you, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, getting boobs. And he was like, what? So I got breast implants and they were fine. They were super fun while they lasted. But as I had them for a few years, actually, I started having really bad adverse reaction. And at first I thought like maybe it was a symptom of like depression because I was in Chicago at the time and seasonal depression is like a real thing. And stuff like my hair stopped growing. I was getting migraines. I couldn't stay awake. I started breaking things. I had never broken anything before. Easily dislocating ribs, fingers, breaking ankles. And I just had no idea what was going on. And I think to kind of demonstrate the severity of it, I had this really terrible tremor. And like, I remember finally taking a video one day and I just had this tremor. I had peripheral neuropathy. I was getting tested for lupus, for MS. Okay, wait, how do I not leave this on repeat behind me? Okay, wait. Okay, we'll go back to that. Yeah. And I had, if you don't know what like the test for MS is, it's terrible. They like stick needles in you, electrocute you, and tell you to flex like 3 times. And after that, I was like, this sucks. I had like 13 vials of blood taken. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And finally, in the back of my mind, which I had an idea, I was like, this all started when I got my boobs. So I eventually got them taken out in 2020. See kind of how like I started drawing and like being an artist in 2020. And I think my that's not how you do it. My face kind of like says a lot. So I went in not thinking anything was gonna change, but as you can see, that giant pimple on my chin was there for months, and it finally started going away after the surgery. And a lot of the light sensitivity went away right away. The migraines went away. I had color back to my face. I had swelling kind of like right here. I could feel my arms again. It was actually a great decision, probably the best decision I've ever made. It sucked because it cost more to take them out than it was to put them in. But because of that, and keep in mind, like, I couldn't even hold a weight, and you can't be an exercise physiologist when you're gonna hand somebody like 40 pounds and you might drop it. So out of necessity, I kind of got forced into finding another outlet. And like, thank goodness I could draw, surprisingly. And yeah, that's actually the real reason why I decided to become an artist, because I just couldn't do what I wanted to do. And before we get back to that, I just want to go back to, oh, no, close your eyes. Don't look. um, so when I was drawing, when I was recovering from the hip surgery and from the boobs, I always had my bestie, or my treasure, at my side. It was Mele. Unfortunately, he passed in March, but he was the bestest boy ever. And my whole thing, Aloha de Mele, is named after him. Partially because, like, one, it's a way cuter signature on my artwork than my name, JT Ojerio. And then two, when I first started drawing, nobody believed it was me, because nobody knew, including myself, that I could draw. And as a joke, they were like, oh no, who else would have drawn that? Mele? And I was like, yeah, Mele, my dog. And so, Aloha de Mele. There it is, yeah. So yeah, that's my little homie. He's the bestest. But going back, when I first started drawing, it was just for funsies. That's actually the first flower I ever drew. I think it looks like somebody sat on it, but I am proud of it. And I had a hard time drawing hair, so naturally I drew Kelly Slater. Because I actually told him this in person one time, because I just blurted it out, and he was like, okay. It's like, oh my God, I just blew my chance. So yeah, I never got to give him a copy of the print. It's fine. I was like super creepy. But one of the reasons why I think that I have never really thought of my drawing skills as treasure is because I felt like it was an alternate to something that I had failed at. I had spent my entire life trying to, you know, be a badass exercise physiologist and all that. And for it to be overshadowed and taken by just this hobby that I didn't even like pay my dues, I didn't, you know, go to school, I didn't hone my skills. It was just this thing. It was like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to give up on this dream I've had for so long, but like this drawing thing is blowing up. And so for the longest time, and including on my like tax forms, I didn't put artists until like last year, because I was like, no, I'm a personal trainer who can draw. Yeah. And yeah, so I thought I had lost my treasure. There we go, back to the original subject. And one of the things, and this is an eloquent quote that I had found online, because I'm not very good with words, is that in order to like share your treasure with the world, it takes a long time for you to build it up, to build that confidence. You have to be very vulnerable, which I hated being, hence why I did, you know, Aloha de Mele and not my actual name. And yeah, just, it wasn't until a few people asked me to do some specific things, I went to put, hold on. Specific, there we go. Things like Foodland wanted my cards. I think my biggest break, there was a talk show called Talk Story. Sorry, I see somebody who rolled up late. That she was like, oh, come on the show and, you know, talk about your art. And I was like, okay, like, I have to fake it. Like, people are expecting things from me. So I gotta believe, or at least fake believing in this treasure. And so I have 3 very favorite quotes I like to live my life by. One of them is, no pressure, no diamonds. Ooh. Uh, ooh, thank you. The other one is confidence is silent, insecurities are loud. And the third one is, and this is just a bonus, is karma ain't a bitch unless you are. So that's another one I like to. That has nothing to do with this. I just wanted to drop that manao. So yeah, it took me a really long time. I'm extremely competitive. So at this point, I'm still not seeing my artwork really as treasure, and seeing anything as worthy. So even if everybody else is like buying and spending money on this, I'm like, okay, this isn't that great to me, so it's not really treasure. Okay, what? I don't even know what's next. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna fake it and make it, and draw more of this treasure to the world. And so I started actually focusing in 2020 on doing completed pieces, and these are still some of the first ones I ever made. And one of the things that I saw emerging as a common theme in my artwork, and it's only through reflection that I can really see what, I guess I didn't know I treasured, but it's just showing through my artwork, is representation of Hawaii and those around us. I'm super mixed, and I love drawing. I mean, I'll draw men too. Hey, I just drew a man the other day. That sounds really weird, but I draw mostly women. And I like to draw our mixed ladies, those who are a mix of Hawaiian, Haole, Asian, all everything, Latino, everything that we have here, and Polynesian. And if you can kind of see throughout my artwork, I also personally-ish know everybody I draw. I think it's a little creepy when I draw someone and I have no idea, like, what if I drew them and like their mom was like, this random girl in Hawaii drew my daughter, like, and she looks kind of naked. So I just like always, especially if they're underage, I'm like, hey, can you ask your mom if I can draw you? I don't want to get sued for copyright infringement. And so it started to emerge kind of what I valued, and that would be, yes, representation and Hawaii. And as I kept going, like I said, I'm not good with words. Thankfully, when people would come up to me and say they liked my art, they would describe it to me, and I'm like, oh, I am totally gonna steal that and like use that to describe my art. And I guess one of the things, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with drawing subjects like this, is I draw from a perspective of somebody who was born and raised on Hawaii. And I love everybody. My husband's not from here. So like, yes, I am not trying to rag on anything, but I'm very lucky that I had the privilege of growing up in Pro City in the back of Waianae Valley with my cousins, going to Kona to visit my mom's side. And the things that I valued actually were just these small things you see throughout your life. So for example, this is layers, but I call her the print that pays rent because, bruh, right? I know. By the way, it's coming out on an Aloha collection bag in a few months. So, hey, you're going to get a bigger space because of that. No, just kidding. But, but for real, I don't really draw places because just like touristy spots, like, I've never drawn Diamond Head, I've never drawn the Mokes, I've never drawn Waikiki. It's because that never really resonated with me. I mean, Waikiki is definitely where like the drinks are and like to have a lot of fun, but small things like like Lay's, like the Pua Kenny Kenny, I mean, everybody loves that. And the reason why it's called layers is because if you're from the West Side, even more than just the West Side and like Kaneohe and everything, like you got the big gold chains that have like your Hawaiian name that's like 12 letters long. That's what that's supposed to look like, but the flower version. So like dripping in layers of gold, yes. So that's where she came from. This was so difficult to draw. This is Pakalana. You can't really see it. I'm gonna try not to flip everybody off. But I have a huge writer's bump now on my finger, and it's from drawing things like that. So yeah, Pakalana, one of my mom's favorite flowers, so much so that she keeps it in plastic bags in the fridge, and I keep thinking it's lettuce, and I'm about to like pour it into a bowl with dressing if I don't check. So, Mom, can you put it in a Tupperware instead? But yes, another thing from my childhood. And then, of course, you got to get the tea, right? The tea leaf, very important. And seeing, hold on. I'm just going to go to the next one because we all know the buns. So, yeah, the tita buns. Yeah, it's something I definitely treasure. I'm wearing one right now. This wasn't on purpose. It's just every day. And just drawing reflections of things that I see in Hawaii. And even though I found a lot of success with these few prints that I put up here, I was like, okay, whatever. Like, this is cool. Like, I'm a digital artist. Like, and I... a lot of people were like, "Oh, you just draw on like the iPad, whatever." And the competitiveness in me, of course, was not looking and seeing how much success and how far I've come from, drawing the flowers that look like somebody sat on them all the way to like these iconic silhouettes of these tita buns. I was like, "Oh, you want to see how I can draw?" So naturally, my next level up to kind of find more value in my artwork was, never mind. Let's go back. One more. So yeah, was actually merch. You gotta love artist merch, right? And I had joined something called Mana Up, which is like a business accelerator program. And the competitiveness in me was like, okay, the next level up for my artwork is putting it on different types of items so that it can travel the world and people can see it more and I can be a more recognized artist, and that's gonna make me feel better because more people know what my stuff is. And I mean, it kind of helped, but it was still one of those things where it's like people will ask, they're like, "Oh, how did you do this?" I was like, "I drew it on my iPad." "Oh, okay, cool." So it's like you're like, do designs. I was like, no, I don't do designs. I do live watercolor drawings. And these are wearable pieces of art. Like, that's why it's $42. Anyways. But yeah, it was like a whole next level of like me honestly trying to like prove myself to another group of people. Or I'm very proud of these. These also pay rent. But it wasn't necessarily what I found is exactly what needed to add value to this thing that is my treasure, my artwork. And so to make myself feel better, I decided to try another medium. And I decided to go with pencil. And you can tell at this point, I'm like actually terrified at touching paint because it's just messy and it's everywhere. And I like white carpets and it just didn't match with anything. And so, yeah, I started doing pencil. I started doing live drawing. And I honestly was like, okay, cool. Like, look, everybody, I can actually draw. It's not just on an iPad. So maybe since you'll see me as more of an artist, I'm going to see myself as more of an artist and more of a respectable, skill set. And of course, I let the negativity get to me. And these actually don't sell that well, unfortunately. I think it has something to do with like somebody's face that you don't know, like 30 inches high, staring at you over your bed. Like, I can see that, So these actually didn't sell that well. And I was like, all right, well, I think it's cool, but nobody else, thinks it's as cool as this digital drawing. So that sucked. And I kept going, but once again, all of our mixed and native wahine up here, really, yeah. You can see there's my action shot. I felt really cool with that headshot right there. But I was like, what's next? Okay, fine. I'll get forced. Thank you, Jasper Wong and the Hawaii Walls family. He was like, you're gonna paint a mural. I was like, the fuck I am. I like did it once. I was like, I've never painted in my entire life before. And he was like, nope, you got it. We got you a good wall. And I was like, oh my God, there's over 70 artists at this Hawaii Walls Festival. If you don't know what it is, it's actually a lot of giving back, beautifying parts of Hawaii that are a little rough. And well, for this one, it was a little rough. And this was specific, it's that word, specifically, sorry, at Palama Settlement. And but I was terrified. Poor Kamea Hadar, if you know who that is, he gave me his number, which he shouldn't have. And I was like, how many colors do I need? What do I need to trace? Like, how do I mix? But like, what do you buy your stuff from? Meanwhile, he's painting like Auntie Edith, the one who's on the coin. He's like painting this on the big island, like making history. And I'm like, can you tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do? Like, when are you coming back? And he was like, brah, this chick's crazy. I probably shouldn't have given her my number, but thanks, Kamea, for texting me back. And it really helped. And for size reference, that's my Mara up there. She came and supported. And again, the theme that I'm seeing is I treasure my homies, my friends. My friend Leolani, she's the one that rolled up late. Love you. Anyways. But honestly, this is the first time in a long time, and this was, when did we do this? May, thank you. May, that I was actually proud of something that I created, that I painted. Thank God it turned out nice, because then I would have been completely traumatized. Mom, why are you laughing so hard? Yeah, I would have been completely traumatized from ever doing this again. And so I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. And I was like, okay, I'm a mural artist now. I'm with the cool kids. I'm with the Hawaii Walls powwow people. Like, I actually had said, like, back in the day, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be cool and, like, you know, paint murals with like all those other cool street artists. And yeah, I did it. And so I was like, okay, yes, I treasure myself. I'm like an actual legit artist. Like, let's see if I can do it again. Ha! I did it again. So this one was at the convention center. This is my friend Penina. And yeah, I had the honor of painting this lovely mural. It was way harder than the first one. And I got a little worried for a hot second that I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, I was like getting like neck crinks and everything, especially. And yeah, so my trust in myself and hold on, where's my eloquent word? Yes. So I actually started to value my artwork again and my skill set, and it did make me feel a lot better. And so it honestly, if I hadn't done these murals, I would have felt really hardcore imposter syndrome being in front of you here today as like an artist that's gonna talk about my artwork. And let's see if I can go back to, and then, okay, I know I said I was only gonna do it in the beginning, but I'm gonna brag a little bit more. These made me feel a little bit better too. I mean, like, the next step, honestly, was collaborations. I'm an only child, and I have only child syndrome. I try not to be an only child, so whenever I have to collaborate, I see it come out just a little bit. It's really hard that I found, in some artists like Punky Aloha do it flawlessly, where they can just, you know, find this happy medium and this vision. And mine is like, why do they want to put a black background on there? Like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like, I'm the artist, they came to me. So I'm getting better at it. And I'm actually really proud that I was able to actually roll out some collaborations without ripping my hair out or like having any falling out. And yeah, that is kind of sharing my mana'o with the world. I was very, very, very blessed to work with Carissa Moore and the Hurley peeps to create all the designs for her newest line. And again, that what I treasure, my island treasure, my upbringing, my heritage. features some native plants on there, most notably her alpacas, which are these lovely little half flowers that grow just by the beaches. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't like talking, so like I think it kind of explains everything for itself. Once again, more ladies. I'll draw men, more men eventually, but like facial hair is really hard to draw. I had to draw like a mustache for this portrait the other day. I was like, oh my god, 5 o'clock shadow is actually very hard to draw. Fun fact. So yeah, other things that I treasure. I don't know what's actually next. What's next? That one. Cool. Okay, so then as I was going through and kind of figuring out like what am I going to talk about that I treasure the most? And honestly, I think when I'm by myself, and as you can see, I'm very like competitive and like, oh, I could have done that better. Like I could have done that. Like, oh, why are they doing that? I can do that too, but like I can do it better. It's like really negative self-talk. I'm totally working on it. But what is the most profound and kind of my favorite takeaway and little treasures, and this can sound really cliche, that I've gotten from my career thus far is the connections and the friendships and just all those little moments that you find that your artwork was a part of. And so honestly, one of my favorite ones, looking at all these photos, is right there with the mural, my friend Leolani. That's her showing her grandpa the painting of her on her birthday. And yeah, I thought that was very special. And yeah, I love that one. It's just special moments like those when people like to send me messages. Like my tutu used to always grow red ginger in her yard, and so this painting reminds me of her. Or pua kenny kenny, my grandma always made pua kenny kenny leis, and so now that I'm living in her house, like here, I just have this huge painting that every time I look at it, it reminds me of her. And so it's small things like that. My favorite is when moms come up to me and they're like, oh, this tita bun looks just like my daughter. Or when dad, my favorite, this dad came up, he's like, I have 3 and they each look like my daughters. Like, oh yes, dad. Thanks for buying 3 pieces. I can go get Starbucks now. But markets and the camaraderie and how much you learn from being around like-minded individuals. It was a really impactful and really magical experience actually being part of the most recent Hawaii Walls, where they brought in 70 artists to paint murals all around Kalihi. And one, artists are really weird, so I felt like I was with my peeps. There's a few of you in here, I can see you. And how much they inspired me, their take on things. Graffiti artists have such a different view on, artwork, and I thought that was really awesome and definitely kind of made an effect on my upcoming works. No, I'm not gonna do graffiti, but I'm not touching spray paint. But no, like never mind. That didn't make sense. But never, my mom, never say never. Oh my god. But just the connections I made. By the way, that's Punky Aloha and Chris Goto. I don't know if you know who they are. Like I'm fangirling in this photo right here so hard. And just families from, who I work with. And honestly, the biggest treasure is the friends and the family. And even though the journey was like super bumpy trying to get there, when I eventually did feel like I paid my dues and, had a little bit of self-acceptance, and I found out that it wasn't necessarily the artwork, it was the stories behind all of them. And my favorite pieces aren't necessarily my best sellers. They're the ones that are of my friends or the ones that my friends have shown their grandpas. And yeah, so that was like how I found the treasure tomorrow. Did I go by really fast? Okay.